So here's the thing, they had to figure it out. He brought it up. No one else did. And suddenly, everyone was talking about it. Someone asked whether he'd tweet differently once he stepped onto Air Force One. He smiled and brushed it off. No, that's what other people do. Not him. He said he was consistent. A very stable genius. Donald Trump repeated it with confidence, like saying it enough times could settle the matter. The claim itself should have ended the conversation. But instead, it became the conversation. He stood beneath the studio lights, smiling toward the audience, repeating the familiar language, great genes, perfect instincts, sharp mind, cognitive tests, critics who could never keep up. But something felt different that night. The applause came quickly, but it didn't land evenly. Some clapped because they agreed. Others clapped because they were waiting for the response, waiting for the collision. And standing just a few feet away was Barack Obama, calm, silent, not interrupting, not reacting, just listening long enough for the room to hear how much weight the word genius was being asked to carry. That was the first shift. Trump expected resistance. He expected outrage, statistics, a debate about schools, intelligence tests, resumes. Maybe Obama would mention Harvard. Maybe he'd talk about constitutional law, or remind everyone who spent 8 years making life-and-death decisions before sunrise. That would have been predictable. But Obama understood something far more dangerous. When a man repeats, "I'm a genius," often enough, the question stops being whether it's true. The question becomes why he needs strangers to keep confirming it. And suddenly, this wasn't a political argument anymore. It was a psychological one. Trump spoke about protection, about strength, about certainty, but there was no sense of a new approach, no acknowledgement of problems, no recognition that responsibility demands more than confidence. The audience shifted in their seats because the focus quietly moved from intelligence to accountability. Trump still smiled, but it tightened, smaller, like he could feel the direction changing. Then Obama stood. No theatrics, no dramatic pause, just a slow walk to the microphone while the room held its breath. And then he said the line that changed everything. Genius isn't what you call yourself while people are clapping. Genius is what remains when the clapping stops and consequences begin. Silence, real silence, not polite silence. Not television silence. The kind where people realize they're witnessing a moment that will outlive the event itself. Then the room erupted. Some stood immediately. Others hesitated, almost stunned, because Obama hadn't tinselted Trump. That's what made it devastating. He didn't attack the label, he moved the measurement. Trump wanted attention on titles. Obama forced attention onto outcomes. And once that happened, people stopped asking whether Trump sounded smart. They started asking whether decisions made lives safer, steadier, calmer. Families don't live inside IQ scores. They live inside prices, wars, schools, hospitals, and the tone set by the person asking for power. That distinction landed hardest with older viewers, people who've seen loud men confuse confidence with wisdom their entire lives. Obama leaned into that memory. Intelligence, he explained, isn't a trophy you place on your own shelf. It isn't a slogan repeated until critics give up. It's judgment, discipline, responsibility. The room listened differently now. Even Trump's supporters grew quieter, because this didn't sound like politics anymore. It sounded personal. Leadership, Obama said, isn't about chasing headlines or feeding outrage. Sometimes it means making decisions people don't like. Sometimes it means doing what's right without applause. He never raised his voice. That was the power of it. The calmer he sounded, the louder the contrast became. Real intelligence listens before acting. It studies consequences. It accepts correction without feeling attacked. That was the first visible crack. The smile stayed on Trump's face, but the rhythm disappeared. If he repeated the genius claim, it sounded defensive. If he attacked Obama, it proved the point. If he changed the subject, everyone would notice. Obama had built a cage out of calm. Then he widened it. He brought ordinary Americans into the room. Not elites, not pundits, people who live with consequences. What does a genius score do for a retired couple watching medicine prices rise? For a teacher buying supplies with her own paycheck? For a veteran waiting months for care? For parents checking grocery prices and pretending not to panic? Nothing. A score doesn't lower bills. It doesn't calm a crisis. It doesn't comfort grieving families. It doesn't replace judgment. And suddenly the word genius sounded hollow. Obama slowed even further. Sometimes wisdom is quiet. Sometimes it listens. Sometimes it says, I was wrong, and then fixes what went wrong. In a world addicted to doubling down, humility felt almost radical. Then came the line that permanently shifted the room. If your intelligence only helps you call others stupid, it hasn't become wisdom yet. The applause returned, but heavier, not playful, recognizing. People had seen it before. Intelligence used as a weapon. Mockery instead of answers. Certainty instead of understanding. Trump wanted admiration. Obama asked whether admiration had improved anyone's life. Trump wanted validation. Obama asked whether validation creates wisdom. And then Obama stopped speaking. Just silence, long enough to become uncomfortable. Trump glanced at the audience, then back again. For a brief moment, uncertainty slipped through. That hesitation spread online almost instantly, not because of an insult, but because confidence suddenly looked fragile. Obama closed by shifting from politics to legacy. Leadership isn't measured by belief in oneself. It's measured by how safe people feel under decisions, how calmly crises are handled, how respectfully disagreement is treated. He wasn't arguing that Trump lacked intelligence. He was arguing something more unsettling. Intelligence without humility becomes ego. Intelligence without discipline becomes instability. Intelligence without empathy becomes performance. By the end, the genius claim sounded tired, like a slogan trying to do the work of evidence. Obama didn't need a score or a document. He only asked whether intelligence had become judgment. That question stayed in the room long after the cameras moved on, because everyone watching knew someone,